Hi everyone, welcome to the channel After All That Years.
I never imagined that the quiet life I'd built with my wife would unravel because of a phone call on a Tuesday night. My name is Harold, and I've lived in this small suburban community for over 2 decades, where neighbors still wave from their porches and everyone knows when you've had your lawn mowed. That evening, when my phone rang and I saw Dorothy's name on the screen, I knew something was wrong. Dorothy lived just down the street from us, an elderly woman who kept to herself most days but had always been observant. She wasn't the type to call unless it mattered, so I answered immediately. "Harold, dear," she said, and I could hear the tremor in her voice. "Could you please come over? It's about Vivian." Hearing my wife's name spoken with such gravity made my chest tighten. Dorothy didn't elaborate, only added that I'd understand once I got there. I didn't press for details. Something in her tone told me this wasn't a conversation for the phone. I grabbed my jacket and stepped into the crisp autumn air. The street felt unusually still as I made the short drive to Dorothy's house. She was waiting by her front door when I arrived, her small frame outlined against the warm light spilling from inside. She led me to her living room without saying much, gesturing for me to sit while she poured tea from an old ceramic pot. I didn't want tea, I wanted answers. "What's happening, Dorothy? Is Vivian all right?" I asked, unable to keep the worry from my voice. Dorothy set down her cup and took a slow breath. "I've witnessed things, Harold. Things that have been weighing on my conscience. I wasn't sure if I should speak up, but I decided you deserve to know." She reached across her coffee table and slid a manila envelope toward me. My hands weren't steady as I opened it and pulled out a collection of photographs. The first image was blurry, but the second was crystal clear. It showed Vivian standing beside a car I didn't recognize, engaged in conversation with a man I'd never seen before. The timestamp indicated these were taken the previous evening. "I wasn't trying to spy," Dorothy said quietly. "But they were right there in plain view from my window. I couldn't just ignore it." I flipped through the remaining photos, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The man appeared to be in his 50s, well-dressed in an expensive suit, with graying hair. Vivian looked different in these pictures. She was smiling with a warmth I hadn't seen in years, leaning toward him as if they were sharing private jokes. "Dorothy, are you certain this means what it appears to mean?" I asked, though my voice lacked any real conviction. "I wish I wasn't sure," she replied, her eyes glistening. "But there's more you need to see." She pulled out her phone and showed me a video. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. Vivian getting into the man's car before they drove away together into the night. I sat there motionless as 1,000 thoughts crashed through my mind. Could this be innocent? A business meeting? An old friend? Or was it something much worse? Dorothy gently touched my hand. "I don't understand what's happening, but I felt you had a right to know." I thanked her, though the words felt empty, and walked back to my car clutching the envelope. The world seemed different now, colder and more uncertain. When I arrived home, Vivian was in the kitchen, humming softly while preparing vegetables for dinner. She looked up and smiled at me, as if everything was perfectly normal. "You're back early tonight. How was your day?" she asked, her tone light and cheerful. For a moment I considered confronting her immediately, but something held me back. I needed more information, more pieces of the puzzle before I said anything that couldn't be taken back. "It was fine," I managed to say, forcing myself to smile as I sat down at our dinner table. The envelope felt like it was burning a hole in my jacket pocket. Dinner that night was surreal. Vivian chatted about her workday, laughing softly as she shared an amusing story from the office. Her demeanor was completely relaxed and natural, but as I sat across from her, my mind kept returning to those photographs in the video Dorothy had shown me. Every smile felt deceptive, every word potentially false. "Is everything okay, Harold? You've barely touched your food," Vivian observed, concern creeping into her voice. I forced another smile. "Just tired from a long day at work. Nothing to worry about." She seemed satisfied with my answer and returned to her meal, but inside I was tormented. Who was the man in those photographs? Why had she lied about working late last night? And why did she seem so unbothered, as if nothing unusual had happened? After Vivian went to bed, I locked myself in my study and spread the photographs across my desk. I examined each one carefully, hoping to find some detail that would explain this away as a misunderstanding. But the more I studied them, the clearer it became that this wasn't innocent. The way she leaned toward the man, the laughter frozen in those snapshots, the ease with which she entered his car, it all pointed to betrayal. Unable to sleep, I decided I needed to take action. I opened my laptop and began investigating. First, I tried to identify the man in the photographs. His face seemed vaguely familiar, as if I'd encountered him before but couldn't quite place where. I searched through social media platforms looking for any connection to Vivian, but came up empty. Frustrated, I changed my approach and examined Vivian's phone records. We shared a family plan, so accessing her call logs wasn't difficult. Sure enough, there were multiple calls to an unfamiliar number over the past month, a number that didn't appear in her contact list. A reverse lookup revealed it was a private line registered to no specific individual. My stomach churned with the realization that this wasn't just some casual acquaintance. The next day, I made a decision that felt wrong but necessary. I decided to follow her. Vivian left for work at her usual time, dressed in her professional attire, and gave me a kiss on the cheek as she headed out. "Have a wonderful day, honey," she said with her usual warm smile. I waited 10 minutes before getting in my car and following her route. Her office was located downtown, and normally she took a direct path there. But halfway through her commute, she turned into a neighborhood I didn't recognize. I maintained my distance, my heart pounding as I watched her pull into the driveway of a modest brick house. She got out, walked to the front door, and knocked. A moment later, the man from the photographs answered, and she went inside without hesitation. I parked several houses away, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. What was I supposed to do now? Confront them directly, or wait to gather more evidence? After what felt like an eternity, I decided to wait. If I confronted her now, she could easily deny everything. I needed proof that couldn't be disputed. I took out my phone and began recording, capturing images of the house, the car in the driveway, and the timestamp on my screen. Then I settled in to wait, my pulse racing with each passing minute. An hour later, the door opened and Vivian emerged, laughing as she adjusted her coat. The man followed her to her car, his hand resting casually on her back. They spoke briefly before she got in and drove away. I remained hidden until she was gone, then turned my attention back to the man. He didn't seem rushed to go back inside, instead lingering on the porch while checking his phone. I managed to take several clear photographs of him and his license plate before heading home. My mind was spinning with questions. What had I just witnessed? Who was this man to my wife? And why had she been lying to me about her whereabouts? When Vivian returned home that evening, she acted as if nothing unusual had occurred. She greeted me with a kiss, asked about my day, and even suggested we watch a movie together. I played along, feeling like I was living in some bizarre, alternate reality. As she sat beside me on the couch, laughing at scenes in the movie, I couldn't help but wonder how many deceptions she'd told me, how many secrets she was keeping. The weight of the photographs and video evidence felt heavier than ever. I knew I couldn't keep this information to myself much longer. The truth was out there, just waiting to destroy the illusion of the life we'd built together. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not until I had gathered all the pieces of this puzzle. The following morning, I woke up with a clear plan of action. The photographs, the video, and the phone records were all components of a larger mystery. But I sensed that whatever Vivian was hiding went much deeper than just a few secret visits to a stranger's house. If I wanted the complete truth, I had to be strategic about it. Vivian left for work as usual, her smile as bright as always. "Have a good day, sweetheart," she called out as she walked to her car. I nodded and waved, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. As soon as her car disappeared around the corner, I grabbed my laptop and phone. My first priority was identifying this man. I took the photographs of him, along with the images of his license plate, and began an online search. After some persistent digging, I found a match on a local business website. His name was Benjamin Fletcher, and he owned a small but successful real estate company downtown. His professional headshot confirmed it was the same person from the photographs. He looked respectable and polished, with a confident expression that now seemed smugly knowing to me. But what was his connection to Vivian? That remained the crucial missing piece. I searched through Benjamin's social media profiles, his business pages, and even local news articles, looking for anything that might link him to my wife. That's when I discovered it, a tagged photograph from 2 months earlier. It was from some kind of corporate charity event, and Vivian was visible in the background, standing at a table with several other people, including Benjamin. So they had met at this charity function. But was that when their relationship began, or did it go back even further? I saved the photograph and continued my investigation. Next, I decided to trace the phone number she'd been calling. I couldn't connect it directly to Benjamin, but it was suspicious enough that I needed more information. I reached out to an old friend of mine, Marcus, who worked in information technology and owed me a favor. I explained that I needed help verifying a phone number, keeping the details deliberately vague. Marcus promised to get back to me by the end of the day. While I waited for his response, I decided to drive past Benjamin's house again. I told myself I was just looking for any additional clues I might have missed, but deep down I knew it was more than that. I needed to feel like I was actively working to uncover the truth. When I arrived, the house looked exactly as it had before, quiet and ordinary, like any other home in the neighborhood. But as I parked and watched, something caught my attention. A delivery truck pulled up, and a uniformed driver stepped out carrying an elaborate bouquet of flowers. He rang the doorbell, and moments later, Benjamin appeared. He signed for the flowers, glanced at the attached card, and smiled before taking them inside. Were those flowers intended for Vivian, or someone else entirely? My mind raced with questions as I photographed the delivery truck and its company logo. Later that afternoon, Marcus called me back. "Harold, about that number you asked me to check. It's a prepaid phone with no registered owner. But here's what's interesting. It's been pinging off the same cell tower near your neighborhood for weeks. Whoever is using it spends a lot of time close to where you live." That was the final piece of evidence I needed. Benjamin was using an untraceable phone to communicate with my wife. This wasn't just some casual connection. They were deliberately concealing their conversations. The evidence was mounting, and all of it pointed to deception. That evening, as Vivian came home and began preparing dinner, I sat at the kitchen table watching her every movement. She was humming softly, completely at ease, while I was consumed by a storm of emotions. I had enough proof to confront her, but taking that step felt like standing at the edge of a precipice. Once I spoke those words, there would be no way to undo them. "Vivian," I began, my voice steady but firm. She turned around, spatula in hand, her expression curious. "What's on your mind?" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I forced a smile and shook my head. "Nothing important. I just wanted to say thank you for dinner." She smiled back, seemingly satisfied, and returned her attention to cooking. But my mind was already racing ahead, planning my next move. I needed one final piece of evidence, something so undeniable that she would have no choice but to confess the truth. Tomorrow, I decided, would be the day everything came to light. The next morning, the tension in our house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Vivian went about her usual routine, completely unaware of the storm building beneath my calm exterior. She kissed me goodbye before leaving for work, her cheerful farewell echoing through the hallway as the door closed behind her. I waited until her car was completely out of sight before grabbing my keys and heading out. This time, I wasn't going to sit back and wait. I had a plan, and it started with visiting Benjamin Fletcher's office. Benjamin's real estate company was housed in a sleek, modern building downtown, the kind of place that projected success and sophistication. I parked a block away and walked in, pretending to be a prospective client. The receptionist greeted me with a professional smile. "Good morning. How can I assist you today?" "I'm interested in purchasing property in this area," I said, maintaining a polite demeanor. "Is Mr. Fletcher available to discuss options?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Mr. Say, Fletcher is currently in meetings, but I'd be happy to schedule an appointment for you." I nodded, as if considering her offer. "Actually, I'll just take some brochures for now. Thank you." As she handed me a glossy brochure, I casually glanced at the framed photographs displayed on the wall behind her desk. One particular image caught my eye. A group photo from the charity event I'd seen online. Benjamin stood prominently in the center, his arm draped casually around Vivian's shoulder. She was holding a glass of wine, smiling with complete ease and familiarity. That was enough confirmation for now. I thanked the receptionist and left, my heart pounding as the pieces continued falling into place. Back home, I decided it was time to gather hard evidence of their meetings. I called Marcus again, explaining more details of my situation. He didn't judge, but I could hear the concern in his voice. "Harold, are you absolutely sure you want to go down this path? Once you start collecting this kind of evidence, there's no turning back." "I have to," I said firmly. "I can't continue living with this uncertainty." Marcus agreed to help me install a GPS tracking device on Vivian's car. That evening, while she was taking a shower, I slipped outside and placed the small device under her rear bumper. It was discreet and undetectable, and it would provide me with the answers I desperately needed. The next day, I monitored her movements through an app on my phone as she went about her daily routine. Everything appeared normal: her office, a coffee shop, the grocery store. But then, just after lunch, the tracker showed her heading toward Benjamin's neighborhood. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I grabbed my jacket and followed her route. By the time I arrived, her car was already parked in Benjamin's driveway. I positioned myself at a safe distance and waited as the minutes stretched into hours. When she finally emerged and drove away, I waited until the coast was clear before making a bold decision. I approached the house directly. It was risky, but I was desperate for answers. I rang the doorbell, and after a moment, Benjamin opened the door. His expression showed polite confusion, but I caught the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Can I help you?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "I'm Harold, Vivian's husband." His face went pale, and for a moment I thought he might slam the door. Instead, he stepped aside and gestured for me to come in. The interior of his house was impeccably maintained, decorated with expensive furniture and tasteful artwork. It felt more like a showroom than a place where someone actually lived. "I assume you're here for explanations," Benjamin said, his tone carefully measured. I nodded. "I've seen the photographs and videos. I know she's been coming here. I just want to understand what's really happening." Benjamin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, Harold, this isn't what you're thinking." I narrowed my eyes. "Then what exactly is it? Because it certainly looks like my wife is sneaking around behind my back." To my surprise, he walked over to a cabinet, pulled out a folder, and handed it to me. Inside were documents, financial reports, emails, and meeting notes from a company I didn't recognize. But Vivian's name appeared throughout the paperwork. "What is all this?" I asked, flipping through the pages. Benjamin leaned against his kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Your wife has been assisting me with a project. It's sensitive, and she didn't want to tell you because she thought you'd be concerned." His explanation sounded rehearsed, but the documents appeared legitimate. Still, something about the entire situation felt wrong to me. "Why all the secrecy?" I asked. "Why the untraceable phone? Why the late-night meetings?" Benjamin hesitated before answering. Vivian insisted on it. She said it was better to handle things this way. I didn't believe him, but I couldn't exactly accuse him of lying without more concrete proof. I left his house feeling more confused than ever, the folder tucked under my arm like evidence of something I couldn't yet understand. That night, as Vivian and I sat down for dinner, I couldn't stop the questions from rising to the surface. "How was work today?" I asked casually, watching her closely. She smiled, completely relaxed. "Busy as always. We have a major project launching soon, so it's been nonstop." I nodded, playing along. "Anything interesting happening?" She shrugged. "Not really, just the usual office routine." Her lies cut deeper than I'd expected. I didn't confront her, not yet, but the weight of what I knew was becoming unbearable. The truth was within reach, but I couldn't shake the feeling that when I finally uncovered it completely, my entire world would collapse. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of tension and half-truths. Every word Vivian spoke felt potentially deceptive, every smile like a mask hiding something darker. I kept my suspicions to myself, biding my time as more pieces of the puzzle slowly revealed themselves. The GPS tracker continued providing valuable intelligence. Most of Vivian's movements seemed routine work, errands, the occasional lunch meeting. But every few days her car would appear at Benjamin Fletcher's house. The pattern was consistent and deeply troubling. She would stay for an hour, sometimes two, before leaving as if nothing unusual had occurred. I began documenting everything methodically. Photographs of her car in his driveway, timestamps from the tracking device, even notes about her behavior when she returned home. It wasn't enough to confront her with yet, but it was building into a case I couldn't ignore. One evening, while Vivian was out running errands, I decided to examine more closely the folder Benjamin had given me. The documents were detailed, filled with financial projections and project outlines. On the surface, everything looked legitimate, but something continued to bother me. Why would a real estate agent need Vivian's expertise for something like this? She worked in marketing, not finance. Then I noticed something I'd missed before, a partially crumpled email at the bottom of the stack. It wasn't from Benjamin or Vivian, but from someone named Sandra W. The tone was casual, almost friendly, but the content made my blood run cold. Ben, I hope Vivian is keeping up her end of the arrangement. We can't afford any mistakes at this stage. Let me know if she needs any reminders about what's at stake. What arrangement? What mistakes? And why would Vivian need reminding about anything? My mind raced with possibilities, none of them reassuring. That night, I decided to push for more information. As we sat down for dinner, I casually brought up her work. You've been putting in long hours lately, I said, keeping my tone light. What's this major project you've been working on? She hesitated for just a moment, long enough for me to notice. Oh, it's just a marketing campaign for a new client. Nothing particularly exciting. I leaned back in my chair, studying her expression. You've been spending considerable time at Benjamin Fletcher's office. Is he the client? Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. For a moment, I thought she might choke, but she quickly recovered, forcing a laugh. How do you know about Ben? I looked him up, I said calmly. Seemed like the sensible thing to do, considering how much time you're spending with him. Her smile faltered, and I saw a flash of panic in her eyes. Harold, it's nothing. Ben is a colleague, that's all. We're collaborating on a project. A project so sensitive you can't even discuss it with me? I asked, my tone becoming sharper. She set down her fork and sighed. Look, I didn't want to worry you. Ben's been going through some difficult times, and I've been helping him out. It's not a big deal. But it was a big deal. I could see it in the way her hands trembled slightly, in the way she avoided making direct eye contact with me. The next day, I decided to take a more direct approach. I called Benjamin's office, disguising my voice, and asked to speak with him. The receptionist transferred my call, and when he answered, I recognized his voice immediately. Benjamin Fletcher speaking, he said. Benjamin, this is Harold, I said firmly. We need to talk. There was a long pause on the other end. Harold, this really isn't the right time. It's never the right time, is it? I shot back. But you've been meeting with my wife, sneaking around behind my back and lying to me. I deserve answers. Benjamin sighed heavily. Meet me at the coffee shop on Maple Street in an hour. We'll discuss it there. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Benjamin was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee. He looked tense, his usual polished demeanor replaced by obvious strain. Harold, he said as I slid into the booth across from him. I owe you an explanation. Start talking, I said, my patience completely exhausted. He hesitated, rubbing his temples as if the weight of the situation was overwhelming. It's not what you're imagining, he began. Vivian isn't. She's not cheating on you, at least not in the way you think. What's that supposed to mean? I snapped. She's been helping me with a personal matter, he said, his voice low. Something involving my business. It's complicated. I didn't believe him. Then why all the secrecy? Why the untraceable phone? Why the constant lies? Benjamin leaned forward, his expression pleading. Harold, I can't give you all the details, but I swear it's not what it looks like. I stared at him, my mind racing. His words didn't add up, and his evasiveness only made me more suspicious. But before I could press him further, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Marcus. I dug deeper into that prepaid phone. It's not just Benjamin using it. There's another number linked to it, someone named Sandra W. You need to find out who she is. Sandra W., the name from the email. The missing piece of the puzzle. I stood up, glaring at Benjamin. This isn't over, not by a long shot. As I left the coffee shop, one thing was crystal clear. Whatever was happening was much bigger than I'd imagined, and I was determined to uncover the truth, regardless of the cost. As I walked out of the coffee shop, Benjamin's evasiveness lingered in my mind like a bad taste. He was clearly hiding something significant, and the mention of Sandra W. felt like the key to understanding the entire situation. My instinct told me I was getting close to the truth, but I wasn't prepared for how deep this deception would go. I sat in my car, staring at Marcus's text message. My hands hovered over my phone as I debated my next move. If Benjamin wouldn't provide answers, maybe Sandra W. would. But who was she? And how did she fit into this puzzle? I called Marcus back. I need more information on Sandra W. Can you find anything? A last name? An address? Anything that connects her to Benjamin or Vivian? Already working on it, Marcus replied. But I'll warn you, Harold, this might take some time. People using untraceable phones are usually trying to hide something significant. Thanks, Marcus. Just keep me updated. Back home, I decided to try a subtler approach with Vivian. I couldn't confront her directly without more evidence, but I could test her reactions and see what information I could gather. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I brought up Benjamin's name again. "Do you remember that charity event you attended a couple of months ago?" I asked, feigning casual interest. Vivian looked up from her plate, her expression neutral. "Yes, why? Benjamin Fletcher was there, wasn't he?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, he was one of the sponsors. Why are you asking about him?" I shrugged. "I came across his name today and remembered you mentioning him. He seemed like he was important at that event." Her eyes flickered with something nervousness, perhaps, but she quickly composed herself. "He's just a client, Harold. Nothing more." Her response felt rehearsed, and I knew she was still hiding something from me. The next morning, Marcus called with an update. "I found something on Sandra W. Her full name is Sandra Walsh. She's listed as a business consultant, but there's virtually no online presence, no LinkedIn, no social media, nothing. It's like she's deliberately trying to stay invisible." "That's definitely suspicious," I muttered. "Anything else?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "She's been listed as a co-signer on several of Benjamin's recent business transactions. Looks like they've been working together for years." That was the connection I'd been looking for. Sandra wasn't just some random contact. She was deeply involved with Benjamin's business. But what did that have to do with Vivian? "Marcus, can you find out if Sandra has any connection to Vivian?" "I'll see what I can dig up, but Harold, you need to be careful. If this is as big as it seems, you might be getting into something dangerous." I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. The pieces were starting to fit together, but there were still too many unanswered questions. Later that day, I decided to follow Vivian again. The tracker showed her heading to Benjamin's house once more, and I positioned myself at a safe distance to observe. This time, she stayed longer, almost 3 hours. When she finally left, I waited for Benjamin to leave as well. Sure enough, about 15 minutes later, he walked out looking tense. He got into his car and drove off, and I decided to follow him. His destination surprised me. Instead of going to his office or another house, he drove to a quiet park on the outskirts of town. He parked and walked to a secluded bench where a woman was waiting for him. She was tall with sharp features and an air of authority. Even from a distance, I could tell she wasn't someone to be trifled with. Benjamin sat down beside her, and they began talking, their body language intense and urgent. I pulled out my phone and started recording, zooming in as much as possible. This had to be Sandra Walsh. Their conversation was too far away for me to hear, but their expressions told me enough. Benjamin looked nervous, constantly glancing around as if he expected to be watched. Sandra, on the other hand, appeared calm and in control, gesturing firmly as she spoke. After about 20 minutes, they stood up and went their separate ways. I decided to follow Sandra, keeping a safe distance as she drove to a small office building in a less busy part of town. Once she was inside, I parked nearby and waited. After about an hour, I decided to take a chance. I walked into the building, pretending to be looking for someone. The receptionist barely glanced at me as I scanned the directory on the wall. Sure enough, Sandra Walsh's name was listed, along with her office number. I didn't approach her office then. I wasn't ready for that confrontation, but now I knew where to find her. That night, Vivian seemed distracted. She picked at her dinner, her usual cheerfulness replaced by quiet tension. "Long day?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Yeah," she said quickly. "Just a lot happening at work." She avoided my gaze, and I could feel the distance growing between us. I wanted to ask her about Benjamin, about Sandra, about everything I'd discovered, but I knew she wouldn't tell me the truth. Not yet. As I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized I was closer than ever to uncovering the complete truth. But I also knew that once I did, there would be no going back. The next morning, I woke up with a single goal: confronting Sandra Walsh. I had tracked Vivian, questioned Benjamin, and pieced together fragments of a story that still didn't make complete sense. But Sandra was the missing link, the one person who could explain what was really happening. After Vivian left for work, I drove straight to Sandra's office building. My heart was pounding as I walked into the building and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Her nameplate was on the door, simple and unrevealing: Sandra Walsh, consultant. I knocked twice, my palms sweaty as I waited. The door opened, and there she was, the woman I'd seen at the park. Up close, she was even more intimidating, her sharp features softened only slightly by a professional but guarded smile. Can I help you? She asked, her tone businesslike but wary. I'm Harold, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Vivian's husband. Her eyes flickered with recognition, but she quickly masked it. I see. And what brings you here? I stepped into her office without being invited. I think you know why I'm here. I know about Benjamin. I know about the untraceable phone. I know about the meetings. I'm done playing games, Sandra. I want the truth. She closed the door behind me and gestured toward a chair. Sit down. I didn't move. I'm not here to be comfortable. Just tell me what's going on. Sandra sighed, crossing her arms as she leaned against her desk. Fine, you want the truth? Here it is. Vivian has been helping us with a very sensitive business matter. Benjamin made some poor investments, and your wife has been working with me to clean up the mess before it becomes public knowledge. I stared at her, trying to process her words. What kind of mess? Fraud, she said bluntly. Benjamin's real estate company is on the verge of collapse. If the truth comes out, it'll destroy his reputation and bankrupt the business. Vivian's been helping us rebrand, reorganize, and quietly bury the worst of it. Her tone was matter of fact, but something about her explanation didn't feel right. And why all the secrecy? Why couldn't Vivian just tell me about this? Sandra's expression hardened. Because this isn't something you want to be involved in, Harold. The less you know, the better. I shook my head, anger rising to the surface. That's not your decision to make. Vivian is my wife. If she's involved in something this serious, I deserve to know. Sandra stepped closer, her voice dropping to a warning tone. You may think you want answers, Harold, but trust me, some truths are better left buried. I left her office feeling more confused than ever. Fraud? Rebranding? None of it felt right. Sandra had given me just enough information to keep me at bay, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to the story. That evening, I decided to confront Vivian directly. She came home smiling as always, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Vivian, I said as she set down her bag, we need to talk. She froze for a moment before turning to face me. About what? About Benjamin, about Sandra, about whatever it is you've been hiding from me. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. I've been tracking you. I know you've been going to Benjamin's house. I've spoken to Sandra. I've seen the photographs, the emails. Just tell me the truth, Vivian. For a moment, I thought she might deny everything. But then her shoulders slumped, and she let out a shaky breath. I didn't want you to find out this way, she said softly. Find out what? I demanded. She sat down at the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she tried to compose herself. Benjamin made a mistake, a big one. He got involved in a business deal that went wrong, and Sandra asked me to help fix it. I didn't want to drag you into it, Harold. I thought I could handle it on my own. And the untraceable phone? The secret meetings? The lies? Her voice broke as she answered. I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared, okay? Scared you'd think I was betraying you. Scared you'd leave me if you thought I was involved in something illegal. I stared at her, my mind racing. So you weren't? There's nothing between you and Benjamin? No, she said firmly, meeting my eyes. There's nothing between Benjamin and me, I swear. Her words should have brought relief, but they didn't. Something still felt wrong, like I was only seeing the surface of a much deeper deception. Why didn't you just tell me from the beginning? I asked, my voice softer now. Because I didn't want to lose you, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Vivian had confessed to part of the truth, but I knew there was more, something Sandra and Benjamin were still hiding. The next step was clear. I needed to dig deeper, to find the evidence that would either clear Vivian's name or expose the full extent of the deception. Because until I had all the answers, I couldn't move forward with any certainty. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of determination. Vivian's tearful confession the night before wasn't enough to satisfy me. There were still too many inconsistencies, too many loose ends. If I was going to get to the bottom of this, I had to act decisively, and this time, I wasn't going to rely on anyone else. I left the house before Vivian woke up and drove straight to Benjamin Fletcher's office. My plan was risky, but I was done playing it safe. The receptionist looked up as I entered, her face showing polite confusion. Mr. Fletcher isn't expecting you, she said hesitantly. I'm not here for an appointment, I replied, my tone firm but controlled. I just need a few minutes of his time. It's urgent. She seemed uncertain but eventually picked up the phone to call Benjamin. Moments later, he appeared at the end of the hallway, his expression a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Harold," he said, walking toward me, "this really isn't a good time." "It never is it?" I replied. "But I'm through waiting. We need to talk now." He hesitated, glancing back toward his office before finally gesturing for me to follow him. Once inside, he closed the door and leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "What do you want?" he asked, his tone defensive. "The truth," I said simply. "No more partial answers, no more deflections. I want to know what's really happening." Benjamin sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've already told you Vivian's been helping me with a business matter. That's all there is to it." "You and I both know that's not true," I snapped. "I spoke to Sandra Walsh. I know about the untraceable phone, the secret meetings. If this is just about a failed business deal, why all the elaborate secrecy?" Benjamin's face darkened at the mention of Sandra's name. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. "You spoke to Sandra?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," I said, stepping closer. "And she gave me just enough information to know that you're both hiding something significant. So either you come clean now, or I take everything I've found to the authorities." For a moment, he said nothing. Then, with a heavy sigh, he sat down behind his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out a thick folder and slid it across the desk toward me. "Everything you want to know is in there," he said, his voice resigned. I opened the folder, my heart pounding as I scanned its contents. What I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a failed business deal, it was a full-blown embezzlement scheme. Benjamin had been systematically siphoning money out of his own company and laundering it through shell corporations. According to the documents, Vivian's role had been to create marketing campaigns that disguised these transactions as legitimate business expenses. "What the hell is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Benjamin looked up at me, his expression grim. "It started small, a few thousand here and there, but it snowballed, and before I knew it, I was in too deep. Sandra came on board to help clean it up, and she brought Vivian in as a favor to me." "A favor?" I spat. "You dragged my wife into this criminal enterprise and called it a favor?" "She agreed to help," Benjamin said defensively. "She thought she was just doing some freelance work. She didn't understand the full scope of what was happening until it was too late." "And now?" I demanded. "Does she know everything?" Benjamin hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. She knows." The weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. Vivian had known. She'd known about the fraud, the lies, the danger, and she'd kept it all from me. That evening, I confronted Vivian one final time. She was in the living room when I walked in, the folder in my hand. Her face went pale as soon as she saw it. "Harold," she began, her voice trembling. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I interrupted, throwing the folder onto the coffee table. "That you've been helping Benjamin embezzle money? That you lied to me repeatedly? That you've been involved in criminal activity?" Tears filled her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. "I didn't know what I was getting into," she said, her voice breaking. "Benjamin said it was just a small project, something to help him out. By the time I realized what was really happening, it was too late." "You could have come to me," I said, my voice rising. "You could have told me the truth instead of sneaking around like a criminal." "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't want to drag you into it. I thought I could fix it on my own." "And now?" I asked, my tone cold. "What happens now?" Vivian didn't answer. She just stared at me, tears falling silently. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't see the woman I thought I knew. I saw a stranger. The next day, I took everything, photographs, documents, recordings, and handed it over to a lawyer. I wasn't sure where this would lead, but I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. Benjamin and Sandra were playing a dangerous game, and Vivian had become their accomplice. But I wasn't going to let them destroy my life. As I drove away from the lawyer's office, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The truth had finally come to light, and while it wasn't the truth I wanted, it was the truth I needed. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again,